My last relationship broke up because I asked her to marry me, and then also asked her to sign a prenuptial agreement, and she said absolutely not. She told me that it is bogus. She told me that she deserved half of my money that I earned for my entire life. All right, let's dive into the details of how it all started. My name's Asher, and this is the story of how my last relationship, which I thought was going to be forever, crumbled because of one fucking conversation. 2 years ago, I met Evelina at a charity gala. Now, I'm not usually the type to attend these fancy events, but my buddy insisted I come along, said it would be good for networking or some shit. So there I was, awkwardly holding a glass of overpriced champagne when I saw her. Evelina, she was stunning, man. Like, jaw-droppingly beautiful. Her dress hugged her in all the right places, and her green eyes practically glowed in the dim light. I must have looked like an idiot just staring at her because she noticed and walked right up to me. "Enjoying the view?" she asked with a smirk. I laughed more out of nervousness than anything, and somehow managed to not make a complete fool of myself. We started talking, and before I knew it, we were lost in conversation. It felt like we were the only two people in the room. Fast forward a bit, and Evelina and I were inseparable. Our chemistry was off the charts. We had these deep late-night conversations about our dreams and fears, took spontaneous road trips, and just genuinely enjoyed each other's company. I was head over heels, man. I was convinced she was the one. So last month, I decided to propose. Yeah, it sounds cliche, but I wanted it to be special. I spent weeks planning the perfect night. I booked a table at our favorite restaurant, this little Italian place where we had our first official date. The food there is amazing, and the ambiance is just right. After dinner, I planned for us to take a walk through the park where we had our first kiss. I know, I'm a romantic sap, but I wanted it to be memorable. The night of the proposal, I was a nervous wreck. I couldn't focus on anything at work and kept checking my pocket to make sure the ring was still there. When I picked Evelina up, she looked stunning as always. She had this glow about her that night, like she knew something special was about to happen. Dinner was perfect. We laughed, reminisced, and just enjoyed each other's company. After dessert, I suggested we take a walk. She seemed a bit suspicious, but agreed. As we walked through the park, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. We reached this little spot by the fountain, where the lights created this magical atmosphere. I took a deep breath, got down on one knee, and pulled out the ring. "Evelina, you've made me the happiest man in the world. Will you marry me?" Her reaction was everything I'd hoped for. She gasped, tears welling up in her eyes, and then she started laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes!" she cried, throwing her arms around me. I slipped the ring on her finger, and we stood there, wrapped up in each other under the stars. It felt like a scene from a damn fairy tale. We celebrated all night. We went back to my place, popped open a bottle of champagne, and talked about our future until the sun came up. It was one of the happiest nights of my life. I was on cloud 9, convinced that this was the start of our forever. But little did I know, that perfect night was about to be overshadowed by the shitstorm that was coming. If I'd known what was going to happen next, I might have just enjoyed that night a little bit longer, holding on to that blissful ignorance. But life has a way of kicking you in the balls when you least expect it. So yeah, that's how it all started. A perfect proposal, a perfect night, and a perfect future. Or so I thought. All right, buckle up, because this is where the fairy tale starts to go to shit. A few days after the magical proposal night, reality set in. I'm not some naive idiot who thinks love conquers all without a bit of practicality. I've worked my ass off to get where I am, and I wanted to make sure both Evelina and I were protected. That's when I decided to bring up the idea of a prenuptial agreement. We were sitting on the couch in my apartment, still basking in the post-engagement glow. I had my arm around her, and she was snuggled up against me, flipping through wedding magazines and getting excited about the details. I decided that now was as good a time as any to bring it up. "Hey babe," I started, trying to sound as casual as possible. "I've been thinking about something, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it." She looked up at me with those big green eyes, curiosity written all over her face. "What's up, Asher?" I took a deep breath. "Well, I've been thinking about a prenuptial agreement. You know, just to make sure we're both protected no matter what happens." Her smile faded instantly, replaced by a look of confusion and hurt. "A prenup? Are you serious?" I nodded, trying to keep my voice calm and steady. "Yeah, I mean, it's just a precaution. It's not that I don't trust you or anything, but we've both worked hard for what we have. It's just smart to have something in place." She sat up, pulling away from me. "So, you think we're going to break up? That's what you're saying, right? You're planning for us to fail." I reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. "No, Evelina, it's not like that. It's just a safety net. It's something a lot of couples do. It doesn't mean I don't trust you or love you." But she wasn't buying it. Her face turned red with anger, and her eyes were filled with tears. "Bullshit, Asher. If you love me, you wouldn't need a fucking prenup. You're basically telling me you're planning for us to fail before we even start." I could feel the tension building, and I knew I needed to explain better. "Evelina, please, listen. It's not about planning for failure. It's about being practical. We don't know what the future holds, and this is just a way to protect both of us." She stood up, shaking her head. "I can't believe you would do this. I thought you trusted me. I thought we were in this together. But clearly, you're more worried about your precious money than about our relationship." I was desperate to make her understand. "Evelina, it's not about the money. It's about making sure we're both secure. If something were to happen, I don't want either of us to be left with nothing." But she was having none of it. "You're an asshole, Asher. If you think I'm some gold digger who's just waiting to take your money, then maybe we shouldn't be getting married at all." With that, she stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. I sat there, stunned, trying to process what had just happened. 1 minute we were planning our future, and the next, everything was falling apart. I spent the next few hours pacing the apartment, replaying the conversation over and over in my head. Maybe I should have brought it up differently. Maybe I should have waited longer. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this was about more than just the prenup. This was about trust, and clearly there was a massive disconnect between us. I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. I sent her a bunch of texts, apologizing and begging her to come back so we could talk. But there was no response. The silence was deafening, and the longer it went on, the more I started to doubt everything. When she finally did text back, it was short and cold. "I need some time to think. Don't contact me." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. Evelina was my world, and now it felt like that world was crumbling. I didn't know what to do, so I did the only thing I could think of. I waited, and as the hours turned into days, I realized that this was going to be a lot harder to fix than I'd ever imagined. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. All I could think about was how I'd fucked up. I talked to my friends about it, and they were divided. Some of them thought I was right to bring up the prenup, saying it was just common sense. Others thought I was a complete idiot for even mentioning it, especially so soon after the proposal. My parents, on the other hand, were fully on my side. "It's just smart, Asher," my dad said. "You've worked hard for what you have. You need to protect yourself." My mom nodded in agreement, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Despite their support, I felt like shit. I wanted Evelina back. I wanted to fix things, but I didn't know how. Every time I replayed that conversation in my head, I couldn't help but feel like there was no right answer. I thought I was doing the responsible thing, but now it felt like I was being punished for it. A week went by, then another. Still no word from Evelina. I was a mess, barely functioning at work, and my friends were getting worried about me. I'd stare at my phone, willing it to ring, hoping she'd change her mind and we could talk things out. But that call never came. Instead, I got a message from one of our mutual friends saying that Evelina was staying with them and that she needed more time. That only made things worse. The longer we were apart, the more I felt the distance growing between us. I knew I had to do something, so I decided to reach out to her friend and see if they could help me get a message to her. I wrote a long, heartfelt letter, pouring out my feelings and explaining my side of the story. I told her how much I loved her and how sorry I was for making her feel like I didn't trust her. I gave the letter to her friend, hoping it would make a difference. But days passed, and there was still no response. I felt like I was drowning, caught in this endless cycle of regret and longing. Eventually, I realized that I couldn't keep waiting for it, killing me inside. I had to find a way to move forward, no matter how much it hurt. So I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the pain. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the ache in my heart never went away. Every night, I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering where it all went wrong. I'd think about all the good times we had, the dreams we shared, and the future we were supposed to have together. And every time, I'd end up in the same place, alone and heartbroken, wishing I could turn back time and do things differently. But life doesn't give you do-overs. All you can do is pick up the pieces and try to move on. So that's what I did, even though it felt like I was leaving a part of myself behind. And as the days turned into weeks, I slowly started to accept that maybe, just maybe, Evelina and I weren't meant to be after all. After that night when Evelina stormed out, everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. I spent the next few days in a fog, barely able to concentrate on anything other than the fact that the woman I loved was gone. I was desperate to fix things, but Evelina wasn't answering my calls or texts. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would leap, only to sink again then when it was just another useless notification. I tried reaching out to her friends, but they either didn't respond or told me to give her space. Space? What the fuck did that even mean? Space was the last thing I wanted. I needed to talk to her, to make her understand that I never meant to hurt her. About a week after our fight, I finally got a text from her. It was short and to the point. "Can we meet? Coffee shop on 5th at 3 p.m.? My heart pounded as I read those words. This was my chance to make things right. I arrived at the coffee shop half an hour early, too nervous to sit still at home. When Evelina walked in, she looked tired, like she hadn't slept much either. She saw me and gave a small, hesitant smile before sitting down. "Hey," I said softly, my voice shaking a little. "Hey," she replied, her voice equally shaky. We sat there in awkward silence for a few moments, neither of us knowing how to start. Finally, I took a deep breath and decided to just dive in. "Evelina, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I brought up the prenup because I thought it was the responsible thing to do, but I see now how much it hurt you. Can we please talk about this and try to work it out?" She looked down at her coffee cup, fiddling with the edge of the sleeve. "Asher, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about the prenup. It just feels like you don't trust me, like you're planning for us to fail before we've even started." I reached across the table to take her hand, but she pulled it back. "No, it's not about that," I insisted. "It's just about being practical. You know I love you more than anything. I just want us both to be protected." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. "You keep saying that, but do you even realize how it sounds? You're asking me to agree to something that says, 'I love you, but just in case, I want to make sure I keep my stuff.' It's like you're already preparing for us to break up." "I know how it sounds, but that's not what I meant. I thought it was just a smart thing to do, to be prepared for anything. It's not about not trusting you." Evelina shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "But that's exactly what it feels like, Asher. It feels like you don't trust me, like you're more worried about your money than about us." I felt a wave of frustration and desperation wash over me. It's not about the money. It's about making sure we're both okay no matter what happens. I don't want to lose you, Evelina. I love you so much, and the thought of us not being together terrifies me. She wiped away a tear, her voice trembling. I love you too, Asher, but I can't be with someone who doesn't trust me completely. A prenup might be practical, but it also feels like a slap in the face. Like you're saying you think there's a chance we won't make it. I wanted to reach out and hold her to make all of this go away, but I knew I had to give her the space she needed. Evelina, please, can we at least talk to a lawyer together? Maybe they can explain it better than I can. It's just a piece of paper, but if it means we can move forward, isn't it worth it? She took a deep breath, looking exhausted. I don't know, Asher. I need time to think. This isn't something I can just agree to overnight. It changes everything. With that, she stood up and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me sitting there, feeling like the biggest idiot in the world. I watched her go, my heart breaking all over again. I knew this wasn't over, but it was clear that things were going to get a lot harder before they got any better. The next few days were torture. I tried to give Evelina the space she asked for, but it was killing me inside. He was tall, dark-haired, and good-looking in that annoyingly effortless way. My stomach churned. I hadn't seen Evelina in months, and now here she was, looking as beautiful as ever. She was laughing at something the guy said, and it felt like a punch to the gut. I downed the rest of my beer in one go, hoping the alcohol would numb the pain. Hey, man, you okay? Lachlan asked, noticing my sudden change in demeanor. I nodded, trying to play it cool. Yeah, I'm fine. Just saw someone I didn't expect to see. Lachlan followed my gaze and immediately understood. Shit. Is that Evelina? Yeah, I muttered, staring into my empty glass. Do you want to leave? He asked, concern in his voice. Nah, I'm good, I replied, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. For the rest of the night, I couldn't stop glancing over at Evelina. It was like a car crash. I couldn't look away, no matter how much it hurt. Eventually, I saw her heading toward the exit with the guy. That's when I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let her walk out of my life again without at least trying to talk to her. I'll be right back, I told Lachlan, who gave me a knowing nod. I hurried out of the bar, catching up to Evelina just as she and the guy were about to get into a cab. Evelina, wait! I called out, my voice louder than I intended. She turned around, surprise and a hint of annoyance flashing across her face. Asher, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you, I said, my heart pounding. Can we go somewhere and talk? The guy she was with looked at me, then at Evelina. Is everything okay? He asked her. It's fine, Finn, she said, giving him a reassuring smile. I'll be just a minute. Finn nodded, though he looked a bit skeptical. All right, I'll wait here. Evelina walked over to me, her arms crossed. What do you want, Asher? I know this is probably the last thing you want, but I've been thinking about you non-stop. I miss you, Evelina. Can we please just talk? She sighed, looking exhausted. Asher, it's been months. We agreed to take a break for a reason. I don't know if talking is going to change anything. Please, I begged, desperation creeping into my voice. Just give me a chance. Let's go somewhere quiet and talk. If you still feel the same way after, I'll leave you alone. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. Fine. There's a coffee shop down the street. Let's go there. We walked in silence to the coffee shop, the tension between us palpable. When we arrived, we found a table in a quiet corner and sat down. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. I know I fucked up, I began, my voice trembling slightly. Bringing up the prenup the way I did, it was stupid. I see that now, but it was never about not trusting you. I love you more than anything, Evelina. I just wanted to make sure we were both protected. She looked down at her hands, her expression unreadable. Asher, it's not just about the prenup. It's about how it made me feel. Like you were already planning for us to fail. That hurt more than anything. I know, I said softly, and I'm so sorry for that. I was an idiot. I thought I was doing the responsible thing, but I see now how much it hurt you. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. No prenup, no conditions. I just want us to be happy. Evelina looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of emotions. It's not that simple, Asher. A lot has happened since then. I've had a lot of time to think, and I'm not sure if we can just go back to the way things were. I know it won't be easy, I admitted, but I'm willing to put in the work. I love you, Evelina. I can't imagine my life without you. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. I don't know, Asher. I need time to think. This is a lot to process. I understand, I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. Take all the time you need. I just needed you to know how I feel. She nodded, looking weary. I appreciate that, but right now I need to get back to Finn. We'll talk later, okay? Okay, I said, my heart sinking. Thank you for listening. She stood up, and for a moment, I thought she might lean in for a hug, but she just gave me a sad smile and walked out of the coffee shop. I watched her go, feeling a mix of hope and despair. At least she was willing to talk. That had to count for something, right? The next few days were torture. I kept replaying our conversation in my head, analyzing every word, every expression. I didn't know what to expect, but I hoped that maybe, just maybe, she'd come back to me. Then, one evening, my phone rang. It was Evelina. Hey, she said, her voice soft. Hey, I replied, my heart racing. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, she continued, and I think we should try to talk things out. Maybe see a counselor, like you suggested. A wave of relief washed over me. That sounds like a good idea. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Evelina. I just want us to be happy again. Me too, she said, her voice wavering slightly. Let's take things slow, see where it goes. Absolutely, I agreed, one step at a time. We made plans to meet with a counselor and start working through our issues. It wasn't going to be easy, and I knew we had a long road ahead of us, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. The counseling sessions were intense. We talked about everything: the prenup, our fears, our hopes for the future. There were tears, arguments, and moments of clarity. It was hard work, but it was worth it. Slowly, we started to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Evelina and I began to spend more time together, rediscovering the connection that had brought us together in the first place. We took things slow, just like we'd promised. There were still moments of doubt and insecurity, but we were committed to making it work. One night, after a particularly emotional counseling session, we went for a walk in the park where I had proposed. The memories flooded back, and I could see the emotion in Evelina's eyes. I still love you, Asher, she said, her voice trembling, but I need to know that you trust me completely. No more doubts, no more safety nets. I trust you, I said, taking her hand, completely. No more prenups, no more bullshit, just us. She looked at me, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a spark of hope in her eyes. Okay, she whispered, let's do this. And just like that, we started to rebuild our future, one step at a time. It wasn't easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but we were committed to making it work. Because in the end, love isn't about safety nets or planning for failure. It's about trust, commitment, and the willingness to fight for each other, no matter what.